In 2011, during the second Polish Kagyu Monlam, Kyabje Tenga Rinpoche said, "In the near future, we intend to build a lakang, or temple, here at the Benchen Karma Kamtsang Center in Grabnik. This temple will endure for entire kalpas. During this time, it will be a place where numerous Dharma activities will take place, led by various lamas, khenpos, and other Buddhist masters, bringing immense benefit to countless beings." It was Rinpoche's wish for a large Buddha statue to be placed in the temple. 4 years later, in the last week of February 2015, 15 crates containing parts of the Buddha statue arrived in Grabnik from Kathmandu. The construction of the temple had begun 4 years earlier. It was already known that a statue would be placed inside, and an appropriate space had been designated for it. However, it was uncertain what kind of statue it would be, what material it would be made of, and where the funding would come from.
I knew that a statue made of hammered metal, like the one we have now, would be very expensive. Moreover, finding a suitable artisan in Nepal seemed extremely difficult to me, practically beyond my imagination. A few years later, when Drobwang Sangye Nyempa Rinpoche visited the center in Grabnik and toured the temple, shortly before his departure, he said he would sponsor the statue. We just needed to take precise measurements. Sangye Nyempa Rinpoche took responsibility for overseeing the entire process. Additionally, one of Rinpoche's close assistants, a senior lama in our monastery, Lama Yeshe Gyamtso, handled practically all communication with the artisans and supervised the work. That's why, when I thanked Sangye Nyempa Rinpoche at the end, he kept saying, "No, thank Lama Yeshe," because he was the one who had done most of the work.
Nie tak, tylko tak. O.
Wow. To chyba głowa.
To jest głowa.
To też jedzie do Krakowa. W tamtą stronę pieszo, panowie. Aha. W środku jeszcze coś macie.
To są dwa papiery.
To są wykroje.
To są wykroje, wzór tego drewna, na którym będzie tych 6 ozdób z tyłu.
Aha.
To się nazywa dzień 6 ozdób.
Okej, to trzeba gdzieś to schować.
O, zdobył.
This is mustache. To jest dużą markę. Kalciem poi.
Czyli przód.
Tutaj jak będziesz i pokazywał kieciem poin, to znaczy, że to jest bardzo ważne. Tego nie wyrzucę.
Stopa.
Stopa.
Tylko która?
Chyba będą wiedzieli, że ciało.
Druga stopa.
A to?
To jest...
Jak?
Głowa garudy?
Tak.
No jest garuda.
Tak?
O, proszę.
Nie no, jak to...
Gdzie te książki?
The statue was packed into 15 crates, consisting of several hundred parts made from hammered copper sheets.
Łączenie wszystkich.
While everything was clear to the artisans who had crafted it, for those encountering such a statue for the first time, the sheer number of pieces was overwhelming.
Aha, Lama mówi, że jak się wszystko pomiesza, będzie trudno, a tak to jest z skrzyniami. Są takie części, które do siebie pasują. Nie mają stodoły,
Ale
nie mają domu.
Czy nie? Możemy tak zrobić, że to jedzie w skrzyniach, wyjmujemy tam na miejscu rzeczy, ja skrzynię zabieram, oni po... Nie, skrzynię ja zabieram. Aha.
Ale Riczyna wiesz, o co chodzi.
Bałagan w domu, co my tutaj próbujemy teraz zrobić. Więc może po prostu opisać porządnie, że to jest z tej skrzyni, z tyłu mamy pisać i z tyłu wszystko dokładnie opisywać.
To pójdę po
Jak oni tam to wiesz, wyjmą, to nie mają tak, żeby takiej stodoły, żeby na kubki kłaść, żeby nie pomieszać.
To co, od środka opisywać?
Wszystko
Od środka.
opisywać.
Każdą blachę.
Każdą blachę.
Zewnętrzna jest szlifowana,
Tak.
prawda?
To jest dla mnie
No to jest,
będzie
to jest
tak.
zewnętrzna,
Tylko
a
tu są właśnie też, jeden jest na łeb.
chyba ta jest z tyłu, mi się wydaje. Albo przód. Przepisz na drugą stronę, złotu to nie zaszkodzi.
No tak, to jeszcze tu napiszę bok w razie czego. I to jest tak samo. To.
Nie, to jest tam, to jest chyba ciało, bo to jest gładkie.
Płatki
No to jest chyba korpus budny, tak.
Ramiona.
Tak, i tu jest głowa i tu jest ramię. To jest różnica, bo prawdopodobnie będzie inny kolor złota na szatach anatom. Dlatego pisać, że to jest
Korpus.
tors, prawy tors. 13. Może ktoś pomóc?
Nie, wszyscy robią zdjęcia.
Dobra. Słucham?
Jaka jest numeracja? Bo ty masz tutaj 12, 13.
No tutaj stop przepisuję.
To zanieść też tam do ozdu.
Bo i tak zaraz.
To są wazy, które będą zarówno w posągu, jak i w stópie. 18 i 18 i w nich będą odpowiednie mantry i różne substancje.
The next stage of work was gilding the statue. This task was undertaken by Joanna and Adam, experienced conservators of historical monuments. When the statue arrived in Poland in separate parts, it turned out that its total surface area was over 40 square meters. This size shocked everyone. Where would they find the money for such a large amount of gold? Fortunately, transfer gilding uses special gold leaf sheets with a thickness of just 1/1000th of a millimeter. These sheets are so thin that they must be applied using special paper sheets or a delicate brush. If touched with a finger, the gold leaf disintegrates into fine dust. After calculating the total amount of gold needed in grams, it turned out to be small enough that the center's modest budget could cover the cost. Centimeter by centimeter, day by day, week after week, Joanna and Adam carefully gilded each section of the statue.
It's wonderful that we can contribute in any way for this statue to stand in the temple in Grabnik. We are very happy to be working on it. We really wanted to. And it's so kind that Lama Rinchen trusted us and allowed us to do this.
Myślę, że byłoby fajnie, gdyby to było jakby...
I think it would be great if this statue, if our work, became part of a larger, very inspiring whole. That will benefit all beings. I hope that people who come to Grabnik will feel proud that such a statue is there.
When the Buddha statue for the temple in the Benchen monastery in Kathmandu was to be created, Tenga Rinpoche personally chose the artisan, a Nepalese craftsman from the Nuar ethnic group whose family had been making Buddha statues for generations in the Patan district. The artisan asked Rinpoche to determine the proportions of the statue. Being a trained artist in the painting of thangkas and the creation of statues, Rinpoche personally glued together large sheets of paper and, on the temple floor, drew the exact proportions of the statue to scale 1:1, following the sacred canon.
One of Rinpoche's assistants, Sherab Wangchuk, recalls that when the father completed the statue, he thought that Rinpoche's paper design might end up discarded. So, he asked for the papers to be returned to the monastery. However, the father, who had 2 sons helping him, sincerely requested to keep them, as it was deeply meaningful to him that Tenga Rinpoche himself had created the design. It is worth noting that our statue was made according to that very same design, the exact proportions that Tenga Rinpoche had laid out on paper.
The first Buddha statues began to be created around the 3rd century BCE during the reign of Emperor Ashoka. Initially, depictions of the Buddha were symbolic rather than figurative. Over time, Buddha images became more detailed and realistic, with distinct sculptural styles emerging across different regions of Asia. The classical depiction of Buddha Shakyamuni is characterized by specific features, such as a single figure, often seated on a lotus in a meditative posture, a serene, smiling face reflecting peace, joy, and wisdom. Distinctive physical traits like a high forehead, elongated earlobes, long fingers, and a characteristic hairstyle with curls. Later, statues began to be filled with sacred texts and relics.
It is also worth noting that the tradition of filling statues with various mantras sacred substances, and other relics originates from India and what is now Nepal. The Tibetans refer to everything south of the Himalayas as the noble land. Today, this region includes India, Bhutan, Nepal, and other countries. However, for Tibetans, it was all considered part of India. This practice is particularly associated with the Vajrayana tradition.
The statue of the Buddha Shakyamuni, funded by Sangye Nyempa Rinpoche, has a classic form and is made from hammered copper sheet. The figure of the Buddha stands 4 meters tall and is seated in a meditative posture, with crossed legs on a wooden structure covered in embossed metal, symbolizing a lotus flower. The left hand, with the open palm, rests on the legs, forming a mudra symbolizing meditation. The right hand, with the fingers touching the ground, forms the earth-touching mudra, known as the Bhumi Sparsha mudra. This gesture represents the moment of awakening when the Buddha called upon the earth as a witness to his achievement. Both the lotus and the statue itself are completely filled with specially rolled mantras, as well as collections of texts from the Kangyur and Tengyur, which contain all of Buddha's teachings. In the central axis of the statue, there is a tree of life, to which various relics are attached. The remaining space is filled with the fragrant needles of juniper.
When we realized that we had such a large statue, and that it was actually filled with paper from head to toe, even in the fingers of the hands, everywhere was filled with paper. In fact, there are several tons of paper here.
Dobra, czyli pytanie jest takie, jaka konstrukcja pod płytę? To jest pytanie numer 1.
Additionally, the structure of the altar itself had to be strong enough to bear such a load.
Bo to jest tak, tu się zwęża, tu się rozszerza, dochodzi do tego samego miejsca.
Czyli jeszcze bardziej rozszerza.
Czyli zobacz, dokładnie na to samo dolna część tronu i zostaje tyle na samą półkę.
Once we realized this, we discussed the matter with the architect, who consulted with a structural engineer. Special foundations had to be added to support the weight on such a small surface area, ensuring everything could withstand the load.
Kształt lotosu wystającego ze ściany.
Ale myślę, że z kolei możemy także dopiero, można złożyć wcześniej. Wiesz, bardzo konkretna robota, tam jest 1 000 000 kawałków drewna. Chcesz, to możemy podejść i
Było powąchać.
To jest liściaste ich, nie bardzo dobre drewno. No ale zakonserwować trzeba będzie.
Twarde drzewo.
No i z takich kawałków jest cała konstrukcja tego lotosu, na którym to jest tylko obłożone cienką tą blachą. Ale całe w środku ma być wypełnione mantrami specjalnymi właśnie do lotosu, które już teraz się obrabiają.
A wąchałeś jak ładnie pachnie?
Tylko, że ja nie mam węchu.
Wiesz, że ładne pachnie.
Egzotyka taka pełna.
Znaczy dla mnie to wilgocią. I kadzidłami nie czuję kadzidła, wilgoć. A teraz tutaj drzewo i grzybka. I zaczyna pachnieć naprawdę. Powąchaj tutaj. To jest ten, proszę. To tak grzybowo zaczyna.
Także zaraz po kursie trzeba będzie może wyjąć na słońce.
Tak, bo jest ewidentnie zmokrawe, nie?
Możemy otworzyć drzwi, będzie przewiew.
Lepiej tu, na przewiew, tylko nie na słońce, bo wtedy za szybka reakcja.
Filling the statue is a process that consists of several stages. First, bumpers are prepared, special vases that are placed under the statue at ground level. Among them are so-called earth vases, 9 vases dedicated to various deities, vases with 8 auspicious signs, and vases of wealth which attract splendor and abundance. At the very bottom of the vases, various substances bringing good fortune are placed, such as bilva fruits, arura, and others. On top of them, a specially prepared and wrapped mandala with colourful threads is placed, on which the so-called tree of life is positioned, marked with the syllables Om, Ah, Hung, So, Ha, and wrapped in the appropriate mantras. The rest of the vase is filled with fragrant branches of thuja and various jewels. In our case, the jewels symbolise semi-precious stones and a few pieces of amber. Next, the vases are supplemented with various substances that bring good fortune, such as saffron petals, incense, and others. Once filled, the vases are tightly sealed. These prepared vases must be consecrated during a special ceremony. The consecration of the vases takes place at an appropriate ceremony. In the Vajrayana Buddhist tradition, this ritual offering is a form of spiritual practice. The altar, vases, and all items needed for the ritual were prepared with the utmost care by Lama Gelek. The lamas participating in the ceremony, under the guidance of the Vajra Master, or Dorje Lobon, recite prayers and mantras and perform ritual acts aimed at invoking the blessings of the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. During the consecration, zungthak is used, 2 small vajras connected by a string made of 5 coloured threads. One vajra is placed on the object being consecrated, while the other is held by the Dorje Lobon close to their heart. This string symbolises the 5 aspects of primordial wisdom, and the entire ritual represents the direct connection between the practitioner and the object being consecrated. Another ritual is trochog, also known as the washing ritual. The consecrated object is washed with previously consecrated water with saffron, symbolically removing all obstacles and impure motivations that may have accompanied those who prepared the object, as well as all other imperfections. If there are multiple objects, or if it is not physically possible to wash them, a special mirror is used in which the reflection of the consecrated objects appears. By washing this reflected image, the objects are symbolically cleansed. The cleansed vases then absorb the sound of the recited mantras. Lama Gelek once again prepared the altar. This time for the puja being performed to purify the space where the vases will be placed. The Dorje Lobon and the other participants recite prayers invoking blessings and protection. During this time, the niches under the altar are lined with fragrant branches and incense. With the sound of bells, the vases are placed in their designated spots. Once the entire puja has been recited, the niches under the altar will be sealed. The load-bearing structure for the statue and the altar, with the vases placed beneath it, is now ready. It will now be covered with black granite.
In Nepal, marble is commonly used for this type of construction and for floors, mainly because they can't afford wood. It sounds strange to us, but in the Himalayas, granite is cheaper than good quality wood, so they cover everything with marble. We were looking for some similarities, and it just so happened that we found an opportunity. This was the last batch from the quarry, which, as far as we know, is now closed. So we wouldn't be able to get more granite of this exact shade. Once again, thanks to generous donors and skilled contractors, everything is now covered with beautiful black granite. It's worth mentioning that when His Holiness the Dalai Lama visited Warsaw in 2007, we already knew that we were going to build the temple. For practical reasons, it was impossible for His Holiness to visit here, but he agreed. This took place literally in the elevator, to consecrate, bless a brick as the cornerstone for the construction. He personally wrote the syllables Om Ahum on the brick, which is now embedded in the wall, exactly at the level of Buddha's heart, right behind the statue. So, His Holiness the Dalai Lama also contributed his brick to this project.
In the meantime, texts were being prepared to fill the statue, the so-called peizung, which are long mantras placed in the lotus at the base of the statue, as well as the kangyo and tengyo, which fill the statue itself. The kangyo is a collection of all the Buddha's teachings. The tengyo is a collection of all the classical commentaries translated from Sanskrit into Tibetan. Out of respect for the sacred texts, each printed verse is first painted with saffron-colored water, which is considered a pure and noble substance. Those working on this task cover their mouths and noses. This is also a sign of respect for the sacred texts, to avoid accidentally soiling them with breath or saliva. Printing these texts, painting them with saffron, and drying them took several weeks. Members of the Sangha would come whenever they had free time to assist with this extraordinary undertaking. The painted sheets were laid out to dry. Since over 2 pallets of paper were used to print all the necessary texts, they filled every available space in the center. When laying out the painted mantras and texts, great care had to be taken not to mix up the order of the sheets. Once the sheets had dried, the next stage of the work could begin. Zung, the long mantras known as dharani, must be rolled into a firm cylinder. To do this, sheets of paper with printed mantras are glued together. Each Each roll begins by winding the first sheet around the incense. Then, additional sheets are rolled up, kneading them using a piece of wood. Larger rolls will fill the lotus, while smaller ones will fill the arms, hands, and head of the statue. Once complete, each roll is sealed, and its top is marked. It's important that the mantras are not placed upside down inside the statue. These rolls are then painted with red paint on top. The final step is to wrap each roll in yellow fabric and then bind it with 5 coloured threads. White at the top, followed by red, blue, yellow, and green. These colours represent the blessings of body, speech, mind, quality, and activity. Wrapping the threads proved to be a very time-consuming task. A new idea emerged and a device was created to help with the wrapping process. This greatly sped up the work. Lama Gelek, who oversaw everything, was amazed. He had never seen anything like it before. Could we have introduced something new to this centuries-old tradition? The zungs are now ready. Hundreds of rolled-up mantras wait for the statue to be assembled. The Kangyur and Tengyur collections must be prepared differently as long strips of paper, just like the traditional prayer texts used during ceremonies and other practices. As with the rolling of the mantras, those handling the Kangyur and Tengyur work with their faces covered to ensure that the sacred texts remain uncontaminated. Kangyur contains the canonical texts of the Buddha's teachings, including sutras and Vinaya, translated into Tibetan. Tengyur consists of commentaries and treatises by Indian masters, also translated into Tibetan, which explain or expand upon the teachings found in the Kangyo. The number of pages in both collections depends on the edition. In the case of the classical edition printed in Tibet, Kangyo consists of approximately 99 volumes, totaling around 60,000 pages. Tengyo is even larger. It spans over 200 volumes, amounting to around 100,000 pages. Organizing these thousands of pages took several weeks with dozens of people involved. After folding and numbering all the texts, they are wrapped in cloth, either burgundy or yellow. Inside the statue, the central axis is represented by the so-called Sok Xing. Sok means the quintessence of life force. Xing means tree. Although this is not an exact translation, we typically refer to it as the tree of life. The wood for the Sok Xing is obtained from a noble tree species, which must be cut down on a specific day, with marking on the eastern side. The east symbolizes birth, awakening, and auspiciousness. This orientation will be considered when placing the tree of life inside the statue. After the tree has dried, it is shaped into a column with a square cross-section, decorated with a half vajra at the bottom and a stupa at the top. Andrzej, a conservationist and sculptor, came from Norway to create these decorations.
This will be the finishing touch for the dorje. We made it in such a way that I can carve it. I will cut the profile from one side first. Once I've done that, I'll flip the beam, glue the next design on, and carve the profile from the other side. Then we'll have a 3D effect. Unfortunately, I have to act as a 3D printer. By Sunday, I should have the dorje ready and begin working on the stupa at the end of the tree of life.
On the levels of the statue's forehead, throat, heart, navel, and at the base of the shaft, we inscribe seed syllables representing the Buddha's body, speech, mind, qualities, and activity. Once the Sok Xing is complete, it will be wrapped in pure yellow silk and relics will be placed at the levels of the forehead, throat, and heart.
The first dorje took me about 20 hours to carve. This is the first tree of life I'm making. I've carved dorjes before, but not for a tree of life. I'm really excited to do this, because it's such a wonderful symbol.
In the temple, scaffolding has been set up, and the installation of decorations that will serve as the backdrop for the statue has begun. Sherab, Lama Gelek's brother, oversees the proper placement of all elements. Traditionally, there are 6 figures representing the 6 paramitas, the 6 liberating actions of the Bodhisattva, as well as a horizontal beam symbolizing the structure of the monastery where the Buddha stayed with his disciples during the monsoon season. There are also symbols representing the great power of the Buddha. In particular, above the Buddha's head is the mythical bird Garuda holding a snake in its beak, symbolizing the triumph over hatred and anger. After months of work, everything is finally ready for the assembly and filling of the statue. It's a difficult and complicated process that requires many days of hard work. The assembly is managed by Sherab Wangchuk, who has experience in this area. He participated in the construction of 2 statues in Kathmandu. First task is assembling the legs and torso and connecting all the parts of these sections of the statue. Assembling the pieces resembles putting together a puzzle, except that the metal sheets aren't cut as precisely, and sharp edges can easily cause cuts. Sometimes the hardest part is figuring out which piece fits where and what it's for.
This is important, but it didn't say.
Ale gdzie?
Tutaj gdzieś chyba razem jest, żeby górę potem jeszcze można spinać.
Aha.
I think
Like this to
like this and next part.
O, jednego Buddę już mamy.
Tylko ma takie duże nogi i mała główka wystaje.
A group of lamas from the monastery in Kathmandu, who are to participate in the upcoming Kagyu Monlam, arrived early to assist with the ceremonies that must be performed before filling the statue. While the assembly team is struggling with fitting the parts, the lamas are preparing for the puja, when the items with which the statue will be filled will be consecrated. Scrolls of mantras, the Kangyur, Tengyur, and the Tree of Life. In fact, there are 2 trees of life. One is for the stupa, which is being finished next to the temple. The puja begins. It will last for several hours. The sounds of mantras and ritual instruments mix with the sounds of drills and hammers. The altar for the puja was once again prepared by Lama Gelek, ensuring that everything to be consecrated is correctly arranged. Due to the hundreds of rolls of mantras and collections of texts, as well as the 2 trees of life, several additional tables were required. Meanwhile, the assembly team has managed to set up all the parts of the legs and torso. Now it's time to prepare the base, the lotus. Before placing the statue on the altar, everything must be checked to ensure it fits together.
This one we have to cut.
The plans drawn by the contractors in Kathmandu resemble a puzzle more than an assembly manual.
Now put one plate up, not floor, only piece of wood.
The base of the statue, the lotus, consists of over 100 small wooden parts.
But now we do like this.
The top of the lotus still needs to be made. Strong and durable OSB boards were prepared for this purpose. However, the size isn't quite right. At this time, the lamas continue their puja. Relics have already been attached to the tree of life, which will be placed in the statue. Sherab changed the plan and decided to temporarily connect the legs of the statue to move them and fit them to the lotus. It seemed like a simple task, but in reality, it turned out to be a very difficult challenge. The holes for the connecting screws didn't align. Was this a mistake by the contractors in Kathmandu, or did something go wrong during the assembly? The lamas finished the puja and are reciting the dedication of merits. But the assembly of the statue's legs still isn't complete. Late at night, the parts of the legs were partially connected, and they were moved to the lotus. However, one part near the left foot just wouldn't fit. Everyone knows they won't go to sleep until this is fixed.
Pośpieszyłeś się, kurde. Jasiu, do góry blachę. Ona mi się tak wygięła ze względu na tłoczenie.
Dobra, panu.
Już wiem o co chodzi.
Ale to stopa przykrywa, także...
Tak.
A będziemy mieli problem.
Jasiu. This is not my size. Dobra, zamykam. We must go to Spiel.
The problem is finally solved. Time to sleep.
Thank you. Dobranoc.
Tomorrow, the next phase of the assembly awaits. In the daylight, it turned out that the legs assembled at night require many adjustments.
Now we go down. We make this.
The concept of assembling the statue is still evolving. Now Sherab suggested disassembling the torso into two parts.
Teraz panowie, Paweł wejdź z drugiej strony, ty trzymaj z tej i będziemy, ja będę wypychał śruby, a wy trzymajcie. Już, z przodu, dobra, teraz spróbujcie do góry.
More and more people are arriving at the center to help with the assembly. Everyone takes on what they feel best suited for. Before placing the lotus on the altar, it's necessary to check that all parts are tightly screwed together and the top and bottom need to be attached. The statue, filled with over a ton of paper and other materials, will stand on this base. This structure must be incredibly sturdy. The bottom is ready, and it can be permanently screwed in. To fit the lotus, part of the scaffolding on the lowest level of the altar needs to be disassembled. Meanwhile, Sherab and Lama Rinchen are measuring and cutting the top of the lotus. They now need to check if the decorative embossing and gilded sheet metal fit the structure. The wooden plates forming the lotus structure are heavy. The whole thing weighs a couple of 100 kilograms. Carrying such a weight to the high altar is no easy task.
Tak, kładziemy na stół, przód w górę i zrobimy i wjechał.
I teraz razem ze stołami.
Tak.
Na kant i tam kantem, tak. Od razu
Tutaj na kant, dopiero tak. Inaczej nie damy rady.
Originally, there was a plan for how to do it. However, during the work, some things had to change. The most important thing is that in the end, the lotus structure ends up on the altar.
Powoli, powoli.
Jest już tak mniej więcej po środku.
Bardziej tutaj, żeby można wstać.
Już jest opuszczony. No i teraz wszystkie ręce na stoły i już podniesiemy.
Podniesiemy, a tylko go tam...
It's done. The lotus is in place. It still needs to be positioned precisely in the center. The proper placement of the statue depends on this. While some discuss how to position the lotus correctly, others are preparing the mantras to fill it. Sherab and Lama Rinchen are checking to ensure nothing has shifted and that the metal sheeting fits the structure.
Tu u góry i u dołu są te same.
To protect it from moisture, each roll of mantras is tightly sealed in a plastic sleeve. Before filling the lotus with mantras, the bottom is covered with fragrant pine needles, powdered incense, and other noble substances. Now the mantras can be placed in the lotus. Inside the lotus, there are several hundred rolls of Dharani mantras. I wonder how long it would take to recite all of them, one after the other. The final step before placing the statue is covering the edges of the lotus with gilded sheet metal and attaching decorative metal panels to the sides. It's already late. We'll finish tomorrow. In the morning, it turned out that the lotus wasn't exactly centered on the altar. The filled structure now weighs several hundred kilograms. But what's that for such a team?
One, two, three. One, two, three.
Ale poszło w tył. Do przodu.
An hour later, the lotus is in place and covered with decorative embossed metal panels. Lama Rinchen is personally hammering the edges of the lotus. Like everyone else, he can't wait for the moment when they can finally place the statue on the lotus. The moment has come. The assembly of the statue itself can begin. First, the previously assembled legs. They aren't very heavy. But great care must be taken not to cut oneself on the sharp edges of the metal or to rub off the gilded surfaces. The positioning of the legs is crucial. After filling this part of the statue with texts and pine needles, they will no longer be able to be moved. This determines the placement of the entire statue. If the legs are crooked, the whole statue will be crooked. While the positioning of the legs is being measured on the altar, the Kangyur and Tengyur collections are being placed under the altar. These will fill the legs of the statue. Sangte Rinpoche has arrived at the temple.
More or less there.
He will participate in the ceremony of placing the tree of life in the statue. At the 5 points corresponding to the body, speech, mind, abilities, and activity, are written the sacred syllables Om, Ah, Hung, So, Ha, and the relics are placed. The most precious are attached at the level of the heart.
They are attached directly to this tree, and there are also relics in our statue. There is a long list of them. Some are relics that I have received over the years from Kyabje Tenga Rinpoche. There are also special relics given specifically for our statue by His Holiness the Karmapa. Additionally, there are other special relics, as well as a bell and vajra, given by Sangye Nyempa Rinpoche. All these constitute the central part of the statue.
In silence, Sankta Rinpoche leads the procession carrying the tree of life with the holy relics. For health reasons, Rinpoche could not climb the scaffolding. He entrusted the setting of the Tree of Life in the statue to Lama Rinchen.
Tylko na górę patrz cały czas. O, już teraz pion jest tu.
Prayers must still be recited, asking for blessings and auspiciousness, with the traditional handful of rice thrown towards the consecrated object to seal them. Now the filling of the statue's legs can be completed. The free space between the collections of Kangyur and Tengyur is filled with fragrant pine needles, in our case, juniper needles. Once the legs are filled, the assembly of the lower part of the torso can begin. In addition to the Kangyur and Tengyur collections, the statue also contains rolled-up mantras wrapped in colorful threads. These mantras invoke the blessings of the Buddha's body, speech, mind, qualities, and activities. Mantras invoking all the lineage holders of the teachings, from Dorje Chang, Tilopa, Naropa, to the 16th Karmapa, and mantras of the most important yidams and protectors. The lower part of the statue is now tightly filled. Meanwhile, one person must keep the Tree of Life upright. Time for the upper torso. Though it is already very late and everyone is tired, the upper part of the statue must be completed, and the arms and hands, which will be mounted tomorrow morning, must be prepared. The hands are already filled with mantras. The arms and forearms will be filled tomorrow during the assembly. That's all for today. The statue is increasingly resembling the figure of the Buddha. From the early morning, the arms and hands of the statue are being assembled and filled. The left arm will later be covered with a robe, so it is not gilded. All protruding pieces of metal must be screwed and hammered into place. The gaps will be filled with silicone. This way, the interior of the statue and everything inside it will be well protected from external factors. When Buddha Shakyamuni attained awakening under the tree in Bodh Gaya, he touched the earth with the tip of his right hand, calling upon it as a witness. This gesture, known as Bhumi Sparsha Mudra, or the earth touching mudra, invokes and symbolizes this event. The statue is almost ready. The gilding can now be corrected and the screws and rivets can be covered. It is time to cover the left arm with a robe. Small sewing corrections on the robe are made using metal cutting scissors. As the final assembly work is taking place in the temple nearby, the monks from the Kathmandu monastery are painting the face of the Buddha. They are properly trained and experienced for this task. The painting must be done precisely according to tradition. The color of each paint, the size and placement of the pupils, the brow line, shading, all details must follow the canon. When painting, one should not hurry. Even the smallest detail matters. The way the face is painted will determine the impression the statue makes. How it will look at the Sangha prostrating before it, and how it will smile at them. Lama Geleg carries the Ushnisha, the pinnacle of the statue's head. Behind him, the head of Buddha is carried. A group of local paparazzi is photographing this extraordinary sight.
Tylko teraz
Żeby nosem nie zaczepić.
Like the rest of the statue, the head is also tightly filled with rolls of mantras and fragrant pine needles. Access to the head is very difficult and requires significant gymnastics.
almost, but yes. Okej. Pięciobarwny sznurek. Pięciobarwny sznurek, taki jak do zungtak.
This under this behind we put danger. Maybe just a little bit.
But maybe we can make a new horse. So we try another one.
Yeah.
The statue is ready. The first prostrations can be offered.
Ogólnie w tradycji buddyjskiej utrzymujemy to, że
In general, in the Buddhist tradition, we maintain that every image of the Buddha should be treated with the same respect as we would treat the Buddha himself. Nevertheless, this statue is exceptionally well filled, and I must say that ours is exceptionally accurate. I know that many statues, even in monasteries in Nepal, are not filled as completely with sacred texts as ours is. Some lamas have told me that some of these statues may have only a third of the texts compared to ours, and the rest are simply filled with pine needles, because preparing it requires both a great cost and labor. But here, with joint effort, many people contributed to making this happen. Someone printed a stack of paper on a private printer, for example. Together, a group of several dozen people was involved in painting each sheet with saffron-colored ink, which is rare, to do everything so meticulously. But what matters is also the multitude of these relics. In my personal belief, based on my personal experience, every time I enter the temple and prostrate, imagining that all living beings are prostrating before this statue, I have this feeling and conviction that we are simply bowing to the Buddha himself.
On September 27, 2015, His Eminence Sangye Nyempa Rinpoche, assisted by monks from the Kathmandu monastery, monks from the center in Poland, and a large number of Polish Sangha gathered for this ceremony, consecrated the newly created statue of the Buddha. pujas and ceremonies in the Vajrayana tradition amaze with the number and variety of rituals. The words of prayers, mantras, hand gestures, mudras, ritual objects, and the sounds of drums, trumpets, bells and damaru drums. All of this has very precisely defined symbolism and meaning. Everything is performed exactly as it has been passed down for thousands of years, from teacher to student. These specific methods in Vajrayana are meant to quickly and effectively lead to the realization of the Bodhisattva ideal in this life. The climax of the ceremony is the unveiling of the face of the Buddha. After 6 months of work, with the participation of over 100 people, the statue shines with a golden glow on the altar in the temple. What is the meaning of such a statue? How should we perceive it? We asked this question to His Eminence Sangye Nyempa Rinpoche.
Image of a Buddha or image of bodhisattvas or deities or whatsoever is just a represent of the ultimate Buddhas, where our level is not upgraded and the level is still low, still on the path. So therefore, we are not able to catch the ultimate, the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. So this is kind of like a bridge to reach the other side, where is the ultimate Buddha. So each and every time we see the image of a Buddha, then we remember the life of a story of a Buddha and what did he do for the sentient beings, how did he generate bodhicitta, how did he practice the bodhisattva's way of life, and how did he benefit all sentient beings. It's not really just image where we worship or we do prostration or make offerings only. So this is not really good idea if you think of this way. It's something like we have to catch the essential meaning when you go through or pass by the image of a Buddha, when you look at a Buddha. So something there is a deep meaning behind there, so which we have to understand the truth of the Buddha and the realistic, the Buddha, and the Buddha that is ultimately come from within. So that is just an example and a symbol of the reality. But at the same time, I would like, so as a beginner, so who does not have that sense, but still okay, that something Buddha is someone who is really highly realized being, did a lot of things for the all sentient beings, and I really respect, and I make offering, I do prostration. So that is also the object where you can do a lot of accumulation merit as well.
In the same year, we hosted Her Eminence Khandro Rinpoche at the center. We asked her the same question. What is the significance of the Buddha statue?
I think so much has happened in these last 5 decades of what we call westernization of Buddhism. And tremendous amount of teachings have been given, many teachers have come. Also the people have practiced and tried to understand and devote their life to Dharma, knowing it to being very beneficial and profoundly truth. Nevertheless, we do sometimes, not always, but sometimes encounter situations where we feel that the Western Buddhist connection is predominantly intellectualization. And so there's a lot of emphasis in intellectually understanding it, learning the theoretical aspect of it, being very connected, feeling very connected to the philosophy and the teachings, which is very fine because Buddhism, on the one hand, emphasizes discernment and being very careful and using your own wisdom to investigate and examine and understand. So understanding becomes a very integral part. But when there is an imbalance and the intellectualization becomes over sort of exaggerated and emphasized, there's a little bit of, I think, lacking in the understanding that there may be accumulation of merit and purification, which are very essential qualities, because there's so much your mind can access and understand. But there's the physical body and the karma of physical body, there's the verbal karma, there's the mental karma, there's just our life and many lifetimes, if possible, to understand beyond just this life. Then many lifetimes karmic imprints, karmic impulses, habitual patterns, things that you have done and the consequences of which are very, very powerful. So therefore, your life has to, and the experiences of this life, karmic consequences of this life, have to also evolve together with the intellectual understanding of the profoundness of the Dharma. So it's almost like if I want to go there, but if I keep sitting here, then my wishing to keep going there may not necessarily be complemented with the body actually making that gesture of progress and going there. So I think from that concept, Tibetan Buddhist, especially the Vajrayana tradition, emphasizes a lot in creation of merit, doing those things that are meritorious, that are virtuous, making sure your body accepts the challenge of transformation, your speech accepts the challenge of transformation, your mind accepts the challenge of transformation. It's not only aspiring transformation, but that it engages in doing things that are transformative. And one of the very sort of the strong basis through which that transformation and accepting the challenge of transformation can arise is when the body does something virtuous, and verbally we do something virtuous, and mentally we do something virtuous. And of all the virtuous activities, generosity is very important, to be generous. Now, generosity can be two things. You can be generous by giving to the others, and on the other hand, you can also exercise that generosity with adding offering to it, making offering to the Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, and so forth. Creating wonderful statues, just as this beautiful statue that Nyingma Rinpoche has offered to this beautiful Sangha that is here, is one of those meritorious activities. And I think it's exceptional that Rinpoche is leading by example. He doesn't need to do that. Most oftentimes what you find is teachers encouraging Sangha to make it possible. Here is a unique example of a teacher making that example, not by words, but by actually doing it. And so I think it shows his immense love and trust to the Sangha members here, and also is an exceptional example that he has allowed all the resources to be placed in the form of an offering. Now, when you make an offering of, let's say, a beautiful statue of the Buddha doesn't require it, we all know that. But it is about the gathered karmic connection, all of the resources that bring together one representation. And why is it so big? It's because our mind is so stubborn and rigid that it does sometimes need a big, impactful image to stop it from its own dialogues and mental chatters. So therefore, the whole concept of creating a beautiful statue is based upon offering and merit. It's an enormous amount of merit. Then why does it need to be so big and beautiful? It's about, expression of selfless giving, so that as best as you can, as big as you can, as excellently as you can, as perfect as you can. The size and how beautiful it is made is often a representation of your ability to go beyond doubt and hesitation, beyond the stinginess and the poverty mentality. So it's about being able to make it as excellent, as perfect, as vast as possible. So this sense of making it very big. Therefore, traditionally you find when teachers say we're going to make a stupa, for example, and the question is how big, they will not say something like 2 feet, 3 feet, 5 meters and so forth. They'll say as big as is possible, because that's the expression, is that you're going to train your mind to do something beyond the limitations of its own poverty mentality. And so that expression of bigness is often there. Then thirdly, as I was saying, Thongrol is another concept that we have. Liberation upon seeing is that an image should be such that liberates the mind from its own ego. It stops the ego to being able to see something bigger than what you are holding on to your own self as. And so therefore, such a vast image is not only meritorious, but it is immensely inspiring that the mind is able to, for a moment, go beyond its own self into accepting the beauty and the sacredness and the immense blessing that is there. So therefore, it's also called liberation upon seeing, because it liberates you from your own ego-grasping mind to actually go beyond into seeing something that represents such beauty of enlightenment. So therefore, there are all these concepts that must be understood. In the West especially, it must be understood. And I think it's a very good start that Benchen here, of course, is a very large Sangha. It represents Tibetan Buddhism in this country. And therefore that it has the presence of such a sacred image will undoubtedly be inspiring, not for just this generation, but for everyone who comes. Even those who are not Buddhists will be able to see this and be here, and that will plant a seed that will connect them to the path of liberation, definitely.
Finally, Sangye Nyenpa Rinpoche wanted to share a few words of his own.
Well, I would like to say a few words, because I'm very happy, because Lama Rinchen did a very good job, of course, and so he's a very great practitioner, and he did really benefit many beings, and particularly here in Poland, and he's doing a very good job. And then, so as through discussion, so we thought all of a sudden, since here is a very good temple and a lakang, so I decided to bring the image of a Buddha. And the history of Poland also needed this kind of thing, and it will be a very beautiful for the purpose of the beauty of Poland in the future, for the blessing, from the blessing of a Buddha for all beings, and particularly people of Poland, for the peace, for the harmony, for the high spiritual practice. Doesn't mean that religious figure, but a spiritual life means like a happy life, which you can catch the depth of your true meaning of life. This is to me, this is the philosophy of our spirituality. Spiritual does not mean that something religious figure or something like worshipping or chanting prayers. It's not that religious. This is not a spiritual. To me, spirituality is the sense of like who could really make a beautiful life and a beautiful country and a beautiful people through something catching up your own true nature and the truth. So this is the life of spiritual. So in this perspective, there's no contradiction between a life of spirituality and a life of world. There's no contradiction. In fact, it helps to each other. So therefore, I hope and I pray that people who ever come to this place and seeing this beautiful image of a Buddha get a blessing. Blessing is not something like a Buddhist way of thinking, but a blessing of true nature. Because the Buddha is the honest man and the truthful man who contribute peace, harmony, and high spirits in this world. So therefore, whoever seen the Buddha, so they can get something power from the imagination or reality, doesn't matter. So can catch something, and from there they can realize who am I and who are they. So that's why this country become a beautiful and a peaceful country forever. So this is my wish. Thank you so much for your question and for giving this chance. Thank you.
The teaching of Buddha Shakyamuni can be summed up in the following words. Do no evil. Continuously perfect yourself in righteousness. Tame your own mind. This is the teaching of the Buddha. May the wishes of Sangye Nyempa Rinpoche be fulfilled. May every person who stands before this statue, or even sees its image, attain peace, harmony, and happiness.